A brand new poll by McLaughlin and Associates gives us a very early sneak preview at the 2028 Republican primary for who voters think will be replacing President-elect Trump as the leader of the Republican Party moving forward. Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. If you saw my video on the Democratic primary in 2028, this is a continuation of that same poll. We have who the Republican primary voters think will be the next Republican up after Donald Trump. And I find this very interesting because not only do I think this has to do with who I think the Republican nominee to replace Donald Trump will be in 2028, but I also think it's very, very possible that the vice president choice for whoever the Republican nominee is, I'm not tipping my hand yet, I'll get to that in a second, is potentially on this list. I think there's a lot of Republican names on here that could potentially be the vice president. So to start things off, the poll has Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, leading with 27% in this poll. That is up 2% from December, when in this same poll, J.D. Vance had 25%. And I don't think this is very surprising. I've gone with the assumption that J.D. Vance will be the Republican nominee in 2028. He's Donald Trump's vice president. I think it makes the most sense. Donald Trump essentially gave this, by appointing him VP, gave him the stamp of approval to continue the MAGA movement and MAGA legacy, having him serve as his vice president. But coming in at number 2 is a very popular and familiar name in the Republican Party, Donald Trump Jr., the president's eldest son. He comes in at second at 21%. So it's very interesting. It's only a 6-point difference between Vance and Trump Jr. However, it is worth noting, if the media reports were correct from the presidential election, Donald Trump Jr. was a big fan of J.D. Vance and urged his father to appoint J.D. Vance as the vice president. So I find it very unlikely that Vance and Trump Jr. would face off against each other in a primary. And seeing as Vance is the vice president, I think Vance would be the obvious choice to run, and Trump Jr. would likely sit out the Republican primary and endorse his friend and trusted colleague. And I think that would be more likely to happen. If it did happen, if it was Vance versus Trump Jr. in a primary, it would be fascinating, because there'd be a great chance that the MAGA base and movement would be completely divided on supporting Vance or Trump Jr. But I don't think that scenario is really going to happen. I think if there's a world where Donald Trump Jr. does run for president, it would probably be something along the lines of a 2032 election. If J.D. Vance does not win the 2028 election, Trump Jr. may run for that. There's always the possibility that J.D. Vance would appoint Donald Trump Jr. as his running mate, as his vice president. Then it'd be a Vance-Trump ticket instead of a Trump-Vance ticket. I'm not sure how realistic that is, but that's always technically a possibility as well. Donald Trump Jr. support at 21% is the same as it was back in December. Coming in at 3 is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Of course, governor of the state of Florida, ran for president in 2024 against President Trump in the primary. Did not last too long after the first few contests, but DeSantis is a very popular name of the Republican Party still. Only at 8% is a little surprising. He's a lot farther back of J.D. Vance than I thought, but I think it's still pretty clear that the Republican Party right now is definitely going in a more MAGA direction if this poll is to be correct. And Vance and Trump Jr. both being in the 20s and DeSantis being down at 8, I think kind of shows the gravity of how big of a lead the MAGA part of the Republican Party has right now. That the really only competitor to Vance or Trump Jr. would be DeSantis at 8, I think kind of says where the Republican Party's head is at going into 2028. So again, unless Trump Jr. runs, I think this is going to be Vance's race to lose. Unless Trump Jr. does run against him, then it gets a lot more interesting. Next, we have Nikki Haley, who of course ran in 2024, lasted the longest in the primary against Donald Trump. She is currently sitting at 2%. Vivek Ramaswamy, of course, the outsider, entrepreneur, businessman candidate, running for governor of Ohio in 2026. So I'm not sure he would run for president. Again, a friend of J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is sending his political team to Ohio to support Vivek's Ohio governor bid at 3%. So I don't think Vivek would be running against J.D. Vance either. So again, that's another person I think would kind of get out of the way of Vance, but he's sitting at 3%. Tim Scott, South Carolina senator, did briefly run for president in 2024. He's sitting at 1%. I think he's someone I would absolutely expect to see in consideration for Vance's vice president if he does decide to do that. I will have a video coming out, I'm sure, in the future about who I think Vance's VP could be. but I think Scott would definitely be in that consideration. Tulsi Gabbard, she's certainly someone I would also consider for Vance's VP. She comes in at 3% on this poll. It is worth noting, by the way, that Vivek did go down 1 point. Nikki Haley went down 2 points. DeSantis went down 1 point as well. Tulsi Gabbard did, however, go up 1 point, and that's where she stands now at 3%. Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, he's another person I'm watching very closely, either for president or vice president in 2028. I think he makes a lot of sense. A Republican being able to win in a likely Democratic state like Virginia, I think certainly makes him appealing as a vice presidential candidate. He may run for president, but I don't think he would have much of a chance against Vance in a primary, no pun intended there. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, of course, the governor of Arkansas and former press secretary for Donald Trump in his first term. She is sitting at 1%. She's another strong candidate for vice president. Marco Rubio, the former Florida senator, now Donald Trump's secretary of state. I won't lie, if J.D. Vance is not the nominee in 2028, one of the first people my mind jumped to was potentially Marco Rubio, as he's someone that I think has wanted to run for president for a while, since 2016 when he first ran. And I think he's someone that, being Secretary of State, could potentially run for president again in 2028. If not, Vance and Rubio teaming up on a Republican ticket would probably be one of the more stronger Republican ticket options, with Vance at the top and a VP. Rubio would be a very formidable Republican to be his vice president. Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, she is sitting at 1%. Tom Cotton, senator of Arkansas, at 0.2%. Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, of course, one of the largest population states in the country, Texas. Greg Abbott is sitting at 2%. He's someone I could also see being a sneaky option potentially for vice president. Rick Scott, Florida senator, at 0.2%. Elise Stefanik, Donald Trump's ambassador to the United Nations, at 0.3%. She is someone I thought would have a little bit more name recognition or polling recognition concerning her name ID, but I think she would be a very interesting choice for potentially VP as well. I think a lot of this list are going to be people under consideration for vice president for J.D. Vance, as I don't think there's going to be much of a competitive primary in 2028. There may be like 5 to 10 candidates who run, but I think if the Trump administration is doing good and their approval numbers are relatively high, I think this is going to be J.D. Vance's primary to lose. But again, we'll have to wait and see how that all unfolds. And former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan is at 1%. I don't think he really has much of a national chance at a Republican primary, but he still has 1% here. So this is very interesting. Again, I think I've made my thoughts pretty well known on this, and I think it's going to be Vance in 2028. I don't think Trump Jr. runs against him. DeSantis may run, Nikki Haley may run, Glenn Youngkin may run, but I don't think they have much of a chance against Vance in a primary, and there are a lot of very strong Republican names here that are possible candidates for vice president. And of course, when it comes to talking about 2028, it all comes down to the electoral map, where right now I have J.D. Vance as the presumed Republican nominee going up against, at this point, it could be any Democrat we really don't know. It could be the former Vice President Kamala Harris. It could be several other Democrats. If you saw my video, one of the people the poll included was Stephen A. Smith, the TV host. So the Democratic primary is truly wide open. It could literally be anyone, but regardless, I think Vance starts out with about 219 electoral votes for 2028, either safe or likely for him. The Democrats, I think, start out with about 212 electoral votes, either safe or likely for them. And it's about 107 electoral votes across the toss-up states that I think will decide the 2028 election. So that's things stand on the poll. It's a very interesting poll, and I definitely want to keep checking in on these because obviously 2028 is still a long ways away, but I think it's a very interesting conversation to get started now and to see how things develop. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like, leave a comment below telling me your thoughts. Make sure you hit subscribe because I'm posting a video every single day, so make sure you come back and don't miss those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in a future video. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day, so I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.